Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Moving the Industry Forward, Asian American Leadership in Transportation. I'd like to begin by thanking our partners at Asian American Leadership in Mobility, or AALM, for their collaboration leadership in bringing today's conversation together. My name is Michael Pimentel, and I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director of the California Transit Association. On behalf of our entire team, thank you for taking the time to join us today. For those of you who may be less familiar with the California Transit Association, we are a statewide trade organization representing more than 220 member organizations that include public transit agencies, intercity passenger and commuter rail systems, private sector partners, transit support groups, all working together toward a shared goal of advancing transit-friendly policy, sustainable funding, and a stronger transportation network across California. Today's webinar is part of a broader 2026 series focused on connecting our member organizations and leaders with leaders who are helping to elevate and support underrepresented voices in the transportation industry, particularly during months of cultural significance. In recognition of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we're proud to spotlight the important work and perspective of ALM and its members. This conversation comes at an important time for our industry. As we think about the future of transportation, from workforce development to system innovation, it's critical that the people that are shaping the future reflect the communities that we serve. Representation, mentorship, and access to opportunity are not just values, they are essential to building a more effective and inclusive transportation system. Today, you'll hear from an outstanding group of leaders who bring a wide range of experiences and perspectives from how they found their path into transportation to the role organizations like ALM play in supporting career growth opportunities, to finally what it takes to lead and create impact in this space. We encourage you to engage throughout the discussion. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit questions at any time. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible during the Q&A portion at the very end of this webinar. And so it's with that it's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and their professional roles, as well as the roles within ALM. And so we'll begin with Gene Kim, the founder of ALM. Gene.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Just on behalf of the ALM community, thank you so much, Michael, Melissa, for the opportunity to be featured in your series. A little bit about myself. I am the ALM president, but professionally, I work for a company called STV. I'm the senior vice president, leading the Southwest region within the West Transportation Group.
And next, we'll go to Juliet.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Juliet Nogales de Guzman. I'm the Director of Human Resources with San Mateo County Transit District. I am new to this group of esteemed panelists, and I work with April Chan, who I believe is your vice chair at So nice to meet everybody.
You will go to Tim Chan.
Hi, everyone. Tim Chan. I'm the group manager of station area planning at BART. It's a role that I've had for 20 years now. And Jean and I, started this conversation about how do we create space for Asian Americans in the transportation and mobility world. We've been so inspired by our peers at, Compto and WTS and Latino in Transit. And we felt like there was something missing, and that's something that we're here to talk a little bit about today.
Thank you, Tim. We'll go to Jane. Jane, unfortunately, it looks like we're having some audio issues for you. You're coming through on mute.
How does this sound?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello. Apologize for that. My name is Jane Davransky, and I am a lead consultant at WSP. And I've been in my current position for about a month now. I previously worked for Caltrans and in tech, doing corporate commuter transportation. And I'm a diehard public transit and transportation fan, and was lucky enough to join to help build it. And now I'm currently the board treasurer.
Well, thank you all. And so folks, we're going to manage this conversation as truly a conversation and try to keep things moving freely, engaging with one another. We've got a series of prepared questions that will help guide how this conversation evolves. And I want to start with something that we have often asked as we've held webinars like this one with other groups. And it really is a conversation about yourselves, background on exactly how you found your way into transportation. Oftentimes, many folks fall into this space. And so for us, we want to maybe start with the question which is, was this always the plan to be in transportation, or did something unexpected lead you into this industry? We're going to give 2 minutes each for each of the panelists, and I'll call out the names to keep us moving. We'll start first with Gene.
Thank you, Michael. It's a really good question. I would say that my passion for transportation really started with um, an interest in systems overall. Um, I remember graduating from college and riding BART in Oakland, um, and kind of thinking, God, gee, who are the folks that actually build this stuff and plan this stuff and develop the schedule? So, um, went to grad school at UC Irvine to get my master's in urban planning, and then from there were a lot of research questions about transportation that became the reason I think I spent 7 years postgraduate studying transportation. And I think it's this: what is the role of transportation in a good society? I think um, to me that is a sort of fundamental question that drives, I think, how we all come at this. And what I would say is that, today is a different day and age than, let's say, 60 years ago when, there was a freeway building era. And arguments at the time were that, we can engineer a great society. And what's good for the state and what's good for the nation is good for the communities. But we learned that that's actually not always the case. In fact, in hindsight, we can recognize that there have been traumatic consequences of a freeway era on communities that today have been and will continue to be impacted by decisions made 60 years ago. So, it's that thing that has made transportation just such an endlessly fascinating topic for me.
Yeah, and thank you, Gene. And in your recitation of your own history, see a lot of parallels with even my own and how I came to this industry. Very much interested in systems, very much interested in what we could be doing to facilitate better connections between people, build community. And for me, that was public transportation, that was heavy infrastructure. And so appreciate that set of observations. And we'll now turn to Tim to tell his story. And Tim, sorry, you're on mute.
Would be helpful if I unmute. So urban and transportation planning was nowhere on my radar until my mid-20s. I was trying to figure out my path and knew it included grad school, but didn't know exactly what it was. But then a little bit later, I somehow landed in two areas, public policy and urban planning, that sounded interesting, but I really didn't know much about it. And one night as I was telling my friend why I selected them, I found myself infinitely more excited talking about urban and transportation planning. And I realized at that moment that I've always been interested in transit. I grew up riding BART and AC Transit everywhere, reading train magazines. I mean, talk about nerdy, train magazines when I was in elementary school. And I've always been fascinated by cities and how people get around in those places. And so that night on the phone with my friend, I listened to my heart and I've never turned back.
That's lovely. And as a longtime fellow AC Transit and BART rider, I'll say the experiences on those systems really did open up a world of opportunities. And it's something that I think many in the Bay Area look to as a path forward for themselves. So thank you for sharing that. We'll move to Jane and then finally to Juliet. So Jane, if you want to take it away on the same question.
For me, my path into transportation wasn't really defined, and it wasn't planned. I actually started after a small fender bender, commuting home from my job as a financial analyst at the Stanford Linear Accelerator in Menlo Park. And I decided to switch to transit to have a calmer way to get to work. And then I ended up loving riding the Marguerite, and I took it every day to get to work. I ended up talking about it so much at work that folks started to suggest that I perhaps should look into doing something related to it. And I started sketching out plans for a TDM program at the accelerator because there wasn't one that existed. And I went to my CFO at the time and asked her if I could build this thing. I didn't know what it even was called at the time on my free energy. And she said, as long as it didn't interfere with my day-to-day job, who was she to stop me from finding my dreams? So that support really meant everything. I built the program in 3 years on zero budget. I enlisted everybody I knew in my work network at the lab to help me do marketing and everything and IT and everything related to a TDM program. And then that was a huge success. I earned a Stanford University Award for the program, which was for sustainability and creativity. And then it was that moment that I realized that this could be more than a side project or a passion. It could be a career. And so I jumped headfirst into it, and here I am.
That's wonderful. Now, Juliet, let's close with you on this question as we then bridge into the next. So, if you want to respond on what brought you to this space.
So I used to take Samtrans and BART to work in school while in high school and college, and I just fell into transit. I worked for city agencies before, and at the time that I switched over to work with Samtrans, I'm like, well, I'm in HR. HR is transferable in different industries, and I didn't realize how much impact I would have by joining the HR department at Samtrans. 20 plus years later, I love that I get to meet our employees in the beginning of their journey with us and their careers with us, and also knowing that coming from from the Bay Area and a large AAPI community, that I get to help make that happen, to hire and provide transit for the community. So yeah, now it's one of those things like, oh yeah, Samtrans. And even my kids say, oh, there's mommy, there's your bus, Samtrans. So it's really great.
And thank you for that, Juliet. So folks, I want to bridge us into the next topic and ask that you reflect on, you lean on your personal backgrounds, your familial experiences, and offer a bit of background on how expectations at home, within your families, maybe shaped your journeys. And then also, if you can opine on why representation matters today, perhaps more than ever before, in the type of work that we lead. And to kick us off, I do want to turn to Tim.
Sure. Well, I'm going to actually talk about my family and the expectations a little bit later, but what I really wanted to do was really set the framing for why representation matters now more than ever before. And so, representation matters for Asian Americans in transportation and planning because these professions shape how people move, live, work, and access opportunity. Who in the room influences which communities are heard, what problems are prioritized, and how equitable the outcomes are. Our lived experiences improve planning decisions. Our Asian American communities are incredibly diverse, including immigrants like myself, refugees, multilingual households, seniors, low-income workers, and suburban and urban populations. Professionals who understand these experiences can better identify transportation barriers, such as limited language access in transit systems or unsafe pedestrian conditions in immigrant business districts. Without representation, these issues are easier to overlook. And as Jean had mentioned earlier, transportation history has often excluded communities of color. Many infrastructure decisions in the United States have displaced or divided minority neighborhoods through highways, urban renewal, and unequal transit investments. Asian American communities have also experienced these impacts from destruction of Chinatowns, including the one in Oakland that BART is working to help restore, to underinvestment in ethnic commercial corridors. Diverse planners and engineers can help ensure future projects avoid repeating those patterns and include affected communities earlier in decision-making. Representation matters now more than ever before because it helps build trust with the communities we serve. Transportation agencies depend on community input, but residents are more likely to not participate if they don't see people who look like themselves or reflect their languages or their cultures and concerns. Asian Americans professionals can help bridge communication gaps and improve outreach to populations that are often underrepresented in civic processes. So I just wanted to conclude with that.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Tim. And what I'll note on this is, I stepped into the role of executive director in 2021, and was very proud to be proud to be the first Mexican American to run this organization. One of the first tasks that we took on as an association under my leadership was to stand up a new task force on diversity, equity, and inclusion within our association. And our central thesis was precisely this, that representation matters, and that part of the work that we could be doing better as an association is ensuring that our decision-making bodies are reflective of the diversity within our industry, but also the diversity of the communities that we serve, for precisely the reasons that you stated. Who's at the table matters, their lived experiences matter. As an organization that is focused on advocacy and industry education, bringing those lived experiences into those conversations lead to better outcomes that ultimately benefit our communities. And so I appreciate just that shared vision, that shared perspective. And I do want to turn to Jean to carry us forward.
Great. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to tell a story about representation on a project. So this was the Vermont Transit Corridor. LA Metro was really thinking about how to, reimagine the corridor to improve bus speeds. It's the most heavily transit utilized corridor, the second most in LA County, but the buses go slow because there's so much traffic. So on this project, we started really thinking about the interface points of the folks that ride the bus along the Vermont corridor, and there was a particular population in Koreatown, and these were older Korean women who lived independently, and there was a clear community of folks who used the bus to get to their shopping. And so, when they would ride the bus, they would take their little wheeled shopping carts with them, which folded up, and, they needed to take it on the bus. And there were a lot of discussions around the space around the bus stop. There was a lot of discussion around how an elderly Korean woman would fold up her shopping cart and get onto the bus. Where on the bus would that cart be stored to accommodate her needs? And what that discussion really highlighted to me was really the critical importance of service planners, of bus operations, really understanding the habits and the needs of their communities at a very, very basic level to think about how to make that transit trip really work for that customer. And the good news is that, the folks at the table really thinking about the physical and operational design of improving buses really took to heart a lot of the feedback that we received when we stepped out into the community. So, that to me was a very, very important experience in helping kind of define sort of my understanding really of why representation matters.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gene. And again, on this topic too, a lot of symmetry with the work that we ourselves have observed here at the association, conversations we've looked to bring to our members when we consider things like how women travel and the unique needs that they have as oftentimes caretakers, limitations that often exist within our systems, whether it's in our vehicles or our station stops, and really looking to advance considerations for that distinct demographic within our ridership. At this last fall conference, we had a conversation first that I'm aware of in our state around the needs of communities that have sensory challenges and how we need to be considering that and inviting them into our planning conversations so we can better account. And so appreciate that perspective that you bring to today's conversation. Now, I do want to now turn to Jane to opine on the same question, and then we'll close on Juliet.
I think this is a great question. I want to approach it from the career that I've had so far in this industry. I started working in my career in a very traditional Asian track, and hopefully I'm not typecasting, but I studied finance and accounting. And I can tell you that my mom was so thrilled that I got a degree in finance. I truly peaked, I think, when I graduated from Santa Clara. And I was raised with this formula, this classic formula: keep your head down, work hard, don't make waves, and definitely don't draw attention to yourself. So it's like a typical, the Asian mantra. And, that's exactly what I did at my job at Stanford. I did my budgets. I tried to blend into the cubicles. And then when I won this award, I realized it wasn't an option anymore. It was the first time that I thought, wait, maybe I can be a leader and maybe I can make a difference. And this idea, I didn't have to stay in the lane that I started in, started to kind of bubble up. And so I think that's why representation matters. When you see some folks who look like you, like Jean, like Tim, like Julie, like Davy Kim, Tilly Chang, you can see yourself stepping into leadership, switching fields, or doing something daring or unexpected. It gives you kind of like the permission to imagine yourself in a different space, a version of yourself. And I think what's important that sometimes it just takes seeing that one person, seeing somebody within AALM, having that platform to tell you that it's okay to try something new and be different and have a successful and rewarding career in this industry.
Thank you, Jane. Juliet?
Along the same lines as Jane, when I started my career, I wasn't going into the traditional careers that many Asian parents want you to go to, being a doctor, being a lawyer, being in finance. When I started working at high school and college, I worked in the food industry and provided customer service. And I thought, okay, early on, providing customer service to the community allowed me to focus on my career in HR. And as I had mentioned before, HR can be transferable in different industries. But working as an HR leader in a transportation agency, it has allowed me to help with providing policies and things that can help hire diverse folks into our industry that can reflect our community. Because it's important that when you see someone that looks like you, as Jane had mentioned, people in the community seeing them, drivers that look like you, they feel comfortable, they feel connected, they feel acknowledged, so that they're not afraid to maybe not be able to speak English very well, that they can go and be comfortable in asking for directions and providing and help and our drivers that are reflective of our community allow that. And so I think that has allowed me, especially as a Filipino American who used to take transit, and my mom used to take transit, and those are the things that I can keep in mind and looking at their Asian American other leaders in my agency as well as other agencies, that it has helped to kind of branch out and come out of that comfort zone as someone a Filipino American who as was also told, like keep your head down, do your work, be a good worker kind of thing. So
And thank you for that. And so folks, we're going to now move the conversation from the personal to this professional organization. And Gene, I want to start with you and ask if you can share a bit about the origin of AALM. And then as we bridge to the full group, I'll be asking you to opine on really what it takes to build a strong professional community, one that supports you, one that can uplift others within your community to progress further, to find opportunity, to find success. And so, Gene, we'll start with you on the origin of all.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Um, it I remember it distinctly. It started with a conversation. Um, and it was with Davy Kim, Jane, who you mentioned. There was something in my head about the kind of organization that I knew that I wanted to sort of be a part of, and I felt like there was a larger appetite for. So I reached out to Davey, and we had this amazing conversation where, he showed me this article. He sent me this article from a friend named Jeffrey Lay, who in the article, the headline of it was "Everything Our Parents Taught Us Was Wrong." And it was a deeply profound moment for me, because, like Jane was saying, just from personal experience, the mantra was always hard work, hard work. Be the best technically at what you do. Don't raise your hand. Um, and I can tell you within my own journey, I adhered to that to a point, but it stopped working for me, and I realized in hindsight that what I really wanted was to have learned my voice sooner. It probably wasn't until my mid 30s that I kind of found my voice and that comfort and confidence to, raise my hand and offer a perspective in diverse audiences. And a lot of times in engineering, I remember, cutting my teeth early on, and I was the only person of color in meetings. So, didn't feel super comfortable for me, right? But in this conversation I had with Davey, we were like, God, in transportation and mobility, there's so many of us that are doing amazing things, but why does it feel like there isn't a critical mass? So I would say that was really the start of what AALM was about, even before it had a name. And I reached out to Tim, and I reached out to others, and this ongoing conversation ultimately led to like a mission statement about what we were. And if I were to just boil it down to its basics, it's really that we're all feeling like sometimes we're on this solitary journey, to develop our careers. But why don't we activate a network and really kind of rally around our community and really be available to help at those high leverage moments when we're making big decisions about what we want to do, and to envision a future that is more than what you maybe thought when you started as an engineer. That really, I think, is what our community is about.
And thank you for that background and really kind of setting the stage for this conversation around professional communities and the importance of them. And so I do want to now turn to Tim and ask that you speak to what it really takes to build, foster, maintain this type of strong community of professionals that help support the members within ALM, and then just creates opportunities more generally for individuals from the AAPI community.
Yeah, I think it requires constant dialogue between ALM leadership and our members, and to bring those who have shown interest in our organization into the fold. ALM has been working to create opportunities like building networks and to bring leadership who look like us to talk about their journeys, to inspire us. And, as I mentioned earlier, like Latinos in Transit and WTS and Compto, we want to also build a strong community for Asian Americans in this space. And which means that we also need to hear from them on things that they care about.
Thank you, Tim. So Jan, I want to turn to you to expand further, and then we'll turn to Juliet.
Absolutely. I'm loving this conversation, Michael. It's been really wonderful to share. When I think about network, I think about the word yes. And throughout my experience in this industry for the last 10 years, I've only been able to get a yes from folks. And what I mean is, as an example, let me share this story. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this career. I cold called Dr. Asha Weinstein Agrawal at San Jose State in the MTI Institute. And she spent over an hour with me discussing the meaning of life and how I had needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my own transportation career. And she offered me some suggestions, take classes and do lots of different things to learn more about the industry. And I ended up earning a grad degree from that program. I reached out to Davey Kim as an example, a person we spoke about at length today. And I asked him, how can I be like you when I grow up? And so he's periodically, quarterly, he and I meet, we talk for 30 minutes to an hour, and he gives me advice. I share my thoughts, and we talk about my career progression and what, opportunities there are that are out there. And he helps me by sharing his experience and giving the advice that he's learned over the years. And it's been super helpful. When Gene was building this program, he threw out a LinkedIn call to action. He said, if anybody's interested, join. And so I wrote to him on LinkedIn and I said, hey, can I join? I'm kind of interested, but I'm not sure if you could use my skills. Here we are. We've built ALM. We spent the last couple of years building up this wonderful community to help others. And so when I think about what it takes to build a strong professional, I think about the power of yes. And yes creates opportunities. And that's my vision for ALM, that it's a place where people come and they get a yes from us and they get support. And so I look forward to meeting everybody who is joining us after this meeting. And hopefully we can give you a yes at some point when you join our organization.
And thank you for that, Jane. And I just want to, I guess, take a moment and just reflect on my excitement to be able to share this forum jointly with you all, to be able to promote after the fact the work that you all are doing at ALM. There are strength in numbers when we talk about networks. There are ways in which those networks then become self-reinforcing and can help deliver stronger outcomes as membership and support grows. And I think there is great opportunity for us together collectively to be working toward that future with ALM. And so appreciate those remarks. And Juliet, I do want to turn to you and speak about your experience with professional networks and what you find as being valuable, supportive in that space.
I think professional networks are really important for mentorship, for to bring in the next generation of leaders. I was fortunate enough to have great mentors throughout my career. My former director of human resources, a strong female, a female that just, she was with the industry for over 37 years. And the former acting general manager, Carter Mao, who had pushed me out of my comfort zone to become, to give me the opportunity to become the director of human resources. And also April Chan, our general manager, she's, pushed me into getting into the AFTA leadership program. My chief people officer, it's representation in our ranks who are, of Asian American background has allowed me to get out of that comfort zone where a lot of Asian Americans are, put in that box where it's just heads down, kind of just get your work done and everything. But being part of a leadership role at Samtrans has allowed me to connect with other folks that I represent, Filipino Americans. And when I go out to the bases, they're very happy to, welcome me, and they trust me to listen to their needs and to their concerns, and that helped me focus with helping implement policies that are fair and equitable. So I think, organizations and networking to be able to go out and talk to folks to get that mentorship and get guidance is really important.
Thank you for that. So, folks, we're going to move to the next question on career growth and leadership moments. Reflecting on your own careers, can you think of a moment where you had to go against expectations, take risks to pursue ultimately something bigger? And looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self in that situation? And so we'll start with Gene, we'll move to Tim, Juliet, then Jane. So, Gene, we'll start with you.
Great. Yeah. So this is a really good question. The moment that I would talk about is the decision I made to leave LA Metro. This was 2017. I started there in 2014, really excited about, ending my professional career, on the agency side. And it was a decision I deliberated over like 7 months. I think it was like 7 months. And ultimately, the decision I made was to leave. And everything that's happened since then, has really challenged me and has really helped me grow, not only as a transportation professional, but just as somebody who is a group leader, in our business. But the thing that I remember at the time, my thing is I'm always learning things the hard way, is that this decision felt very scary, just because I can't say that I really used a mentor or talked to folks about it. It was all kind of, this thing that I was dealing with myself. So if there was any advice I would give my younger self, it really is to reach out and to build that network of folks who care about you, are invested in you, whom you trust, whose advice really does help sharpen kind of the reasons why you're making critical life decisions. So just connecting it with the conversation that we're having is, I think that's really at the essence of what AALM is. Um, at the end of the day, it's about individuals who are part of this community who, when called upon, kind of rally around other members to help them with those challenges, those moments, those big moments where there are big decisions that have to be made. So that's what I would say, Michael.
Thank you, Jim. Gene. Tim, let's go on to you.
Well, my parents really wanted me to go into computer science. So my decision to enter the planning profession definitely goes against their expectations. And, like many of you had mentioned earlier, we are, taught early on to be compliant, not to ruffle feathers, respect your elders, stay quiet. No, but my career has been the opposite of all those things. And I'm loud when I need to be. I'm pushy when I need to be. I'm advocating for things that are important to BART and to the communities we serve. And that means having to challenge people along the way, especially those who are dead set against change. I would tell my younger self that bringing my most authentic self to the table is key to being the best person, the best planner, one who cares deeply about communities, who listens even when things are difficult, and who finds solutions when the barriers are high. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Thank you. And we'll turn next to Juliet and then Jane.
I think before I started Samtrans, I was at a job where I wasn't really getting along with my supervisor, and it wasn't a great time. And I still think have PTSD from it. So at the time, my parents would have said, "Oh, stick to that job. It's a great job with great pay and great benefits." But I was miserable. So instead of sticking it out and for the sake of my own well-being, I left and I didn't have a job lined up. Usually oh, I got to get a job first before I could leave from one place to another. But an opening at Samtrans came across my job search, and I said, well, why not? Here I am 23 years later, and I'm still here. And leaving that other job was the best decision that I made and helped me find my way here to Samtrans. And I think what I would say to my previous self and to those who would be in that same situation, don't be afraid to take that risk, especially if it's not a healthy space for you. Because without risk or failure, you won't learn your own strength. And, I don't think I would have ever been here at this agency if I didn't take that risk.
Thank you. Jane.
I think for myself, I experienced so much, I think, energy and excitement building that program back at Stanford University. And that, now that I think about it, is a little scary because it was deviating from my core finance responsibilities. I could have in theory gotten in big trouble had I not run things by the correct people and pursue this side project on my own at a company where they're not in the business of doing transportation. But I decided to move forward. I decided to enlist support from all of my colleagues, my friends, the CFO, and eventually build a program that won an award. And so I think if I were to meet myself, my younger self, I would say to that person, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to seek advice and feedback from others. I think that's where you learn the most. And it's not always great to pretend you know everything. And so it's always great to get advice from leaders and mentors and seek feedback from these individuals who have gone through the same, who have gone through experiences within the industry to help guide your own career and your own direction for what you want your professional life to look like.
That's wonderful. And I think as I reflect on all of these responses, my takeaway, build relationships, lean into those relationships, ask questions, take risks, all that supporting us in our own personal evolution. Now, I want to now broaden the conversation to the industry's evolution and really the future of our transportation industry. And so, looking ahead, I'd like for you to opine on how you've seen the industry evolve, but then two, what do you hope that it looks like 5 years from now? And so for this, and Juliet, we'll lean on your HR background, your workforce lens, and start with you to open up the conversation.
So maybe about, when I first started, wasn't as many Asian Americans in the district. And as, our population and our community grows in the area, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we reflect that community in our workforce. Right now at Samtrans, we have 40% of our employees are of AAPI descent or background. And of those, there's about 32% of them in the supervisory or lead roles in managers, directors, chiefs, and even our general manager. It has changed a lot since I've been at the district, and it does show that there is a truer reflection of the SF Bay Area community here. Amongst the director and chief levels, there's about 21% representation, so we still have a little bit work to do in our senior leadership ranks. But I think by providing leadership training and programs that focus on next leadership skills like emotional intelligence, the strategic mindset, having presence and articulating your ideas, for our mid-level managers, those that are in that 32% of our supervisory group. I hope that we can bring those group that to grow to become our next generation of senior leaders.
Thank you, Juliet. We'll turn to Jean.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Um, my response is really going to be kind of about how I've seen mobility change and where I think it's going. So 5 years from now, um, you know, I envision, um, a time that mobility as a service, is really at your fingertips, and you're able to, maybe through an AI agent, curate a connected trip using multiple transit modes. Um, to get from point A to point B and to do it seamlessly. And we, have the technology to do it. And we're starting to see super exciting things happen. Um, and so what I would say is that, I think we're just scratching the surface on how technology is really changing the way that customers experience transit. Um, and, I'm here for it. We want to make transit as friendly and user friendly as possible to every demographic. And what's exciting to me is just this generation coming of age, right? Who've said, hey, I don't need a car. I want to move into the heart of the city, and I want to take transit, and I want to take advantage of all of these services to get where I want to go. And this isn't the California of the 1970s and 80s anymore. We live in a day and age where mobility doesn't have to be compromised because we don't have a car. So that to me is the future.
Thank you, Jean. Tim. And sorry, Tim, you're on mute.
Um, Thanks. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I've seen the industry grow and expand to be more welcoming and diverse, especially in urban areas. And we have embraced and continue to embrace representation, and community building, even in today's political climate. And at BART, we've evolved from being solely a rail operator to a rail operator while also promoting development on our property. Looking out 5 years from now, I'm going to take a slightly different, maybe a wholly different approach than what Gene said about technology. And I'll just say that I think I approach it from a community perspective as opposed to a mobility perspective. And that is that I'm really worried about AI. AI, we see it as making things more efficient, and it's helping to streamline a lot of things, and it's helping to bring more information to us. And I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, the intent of AI is also about eliminating positions that are deemed to be inefficient. And when I think about technology over the past 30 years, I think about Microsoft Suite and how it has eliminated tens of thousands of assistant positions, because now we're able to write our own letters and create our own spreadsheets, and so we don't need assistants anymore. And what I see in 5 years' time, if not sooner, is that there will be many more jobs that will be eliminated. And unfortunately, a lot of these jobs are dependent by those who are middle income or lower income. And so what I see in terms of, the pluses and minuses of technology is that it's great in some ways, but we have to be so careful about its full application of it, because I do think it will have a profound impact on communities and an even bigger divide, and that will create an even bigger divide than the one that we currently have. So I didn't mean to be a downer, but I really wanted us to think through about, what we are signing on for.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And Jane, we'll close out with you, and then we'll provide some wrap-up remarks as we uh, then open it up for audience Q&A, where we have about 10 minutes to get through that. So, Jane, we'll move to you.
So in terms of my role in the industry, I've been lucky enough to be involved with resource management or budget management. And what I see is that there's opportunity in the industry to become better with our resources. And what I mean is, it's be more strategic with those resources and be more innovative in how we use those resources uh, uh, in how we're building our transportation systems.
Thank you. And so, folks, reflecting on this, we touch on a number of topics: diversity, continued diversity within our industry, hopes that that diversity begins to permeate the C-suite. Some of it in evidence, even in this conversation, much of it in evidence within our association. But of course, we want to see that continue to advance. And then the pros and cons of technology advancement. There are, upsides certainly in terms of democratization of tools and greater access that can be afforded, but also too some potential downsides. The conversation around what often will be referred to within economics as creative destruction, the loss of jobs, but also potentially the creation of new opportunities that override and eclipse what we could have envisioned for the future. And so, a lot to chew on today. We've got opportunities for folks to ask their own questions. And so, would encourage those of you who are tuning in, if you've got a question, please utilize the Q&A box. We'll be pulling on that to ask our panelists questions. And I do see that we have an initial question related to DEI. And so the question asks, how do we elevate and empower the concept of DEI when these words are often seen negatively? And the commenter writes, especially now in this current moment. And so, as leaders of AALM, perhaps I'll start with Eugene to take that question, and then would invite others who want to jump in to go ahead and do so.
Yeah. So I think it's a good question at a very, I'll just say, politically charged time. Um, the way I would answer that question is, you might say that it's become a loaded acronym. But if I were to boil down why I believe WTS, Compto, Lit, AAAE, ALM exist, is because, and we've used this word, of the members of our community who have value from interacting with and being part of a network that helps them professionally, that gives them information to help grow their careers and stay plugged into the industry. And that's never going to change. That's not going to change now. It's not going to change 4 years from now. The answer that I would say is that now more than ever, it's more important for our organizations to support one another. And over the last year, we've seen that. We've been to APTA where we've hosted events with Build Out and with Lit and ALM, and the ability to just be together and just at least support each other and know that it's really important that all of us are recognizing that representation should be really at the center of decision making with respect to our workforce composition, with respect to how we plan mobility and transit for the customers that we serve. So that's how I would answer the question. I certainly would invite Juliet, Jane, and Tim to share their thoughts.
Jump in a little bit. I think, DEI word seems like, oh, that's a taboo word, especially at this time. But what we're doing here is keeping that sense of belonging. So instead of using DEI as the word, we're saying, okay, belonging is what you want to ensure that you're inviting folks to feel like they belong at your organization, or to feel like you belong into the community and into these network organizations. It allows folks to identify with one another, with similar experiences. And I think, that's how we're getting around continuing that effort just to make sure that folks still feel like they belong.
Thank you. Others want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to jump in on, from Bart's perspective, we get a lot of federal grants. So we've been on the hot seat, right, since day one. Um, and, our feeling is that just because we no longer can use certain terminologies, climate resiliency, DEI, whatever it is we can't use, it doesn't mean that we stop doing the work that we have been expected to do, that we have committed to doing. Is baked into our policies, is baked into our programs. And that doesn't change. And so, yeah, maybe the reporting to FTA, might differ. Maybe we don't include certain questions. Maybe we don't ask certain questions of certain communities. It doesn't stop the work that we do and the work that we do on the ground in those communities. So, it's unfortunate we're in this situation, but again, we're not too worried because we're still doing what we need to do.
Thank you, Tim.
So
Jane,
the last word in DEI is inclusion. So what's the opposite of inclusion? Exclusion. Exclusion is essentially, when you boil it down, the word no. And so it's essentially saying no. And so if we flip that around and we just use what I talked about earlier, say yes, we are actually saying yes to a lot of things. And we're saying yes to helping others, saying yes to being leaders in our community, and saying yes to questions that are hard to ask, but some of us may have the answers to. And so I think what ALM represents is all those things. And we are a representation of that word yes. It may be the word DEI that was used in the past. It may be representation. It may be, some other word. But it's really essentially just saying yes and saying that we are here for you and we're here to support you in your career.
Yeah, and I love that it's about inclusion, not exclusion. And in my view, it's about empowerment, not disempowerment.
Right.
Making sure that everyone has a seat at the table to inform decision making, to have a voice, and to ultimately make sure that as we're building projects, delivering services, that we've listened to, we've reflected on, we have advanced the interests and priorities of communities that are very diverse, diverse needs, diverse expectations. And so, folks, we have, I think, time for maybe one more question. And so I'm going to take a look, and I'll just note if you have submitted a question, we're not able to get to it today. We'll hold these in reserve. We'll make sure that we get you some responses. But what I would ask is this first question, in the interest of being fair and equitable. What suggestion would you have for students who are entering into the industry in terms of curriculum, other activities, skills that they should focus on? Because this is a fairly general question, we'll open up to the group and ask anyone who wants to jump in to go ahead and do so.
Sure, Michael, I'm happy to start. So, my first piece of advice is exercise communication skills that do kind of bake in, and I'm going to go ahead and use this term, sort of emotional intelligence. You know, so I'm talking to my younger self now, which is as early as possible, find your voice, and don't limit what you think your strengths are and what your abilities are. I think in looking at some of the best leaders in every industry, they outgrew and exceeded their expectations because they were really hungry to grow their networks, super passionate about what they were doing, but able to communicate big ideas to diverse audiences. So, I would really, really emphasize this idea of being able to communicate really powerfully in written form, and also in conversations and public speaking as well. So those are the things, that I think about when I'm thinking about talking to my younger self. So I'll stop there.
And others want to jump in?
Yeah, as a recent grad from San Jose State's transportation management program, I got a graduate degree recently. I would emphasize just talking to your professors, networking with your classmates, and joining any alumni associations that may exist after you graduate. And that way you can maintain and keep your network. Stay in contact on LinkedIn. And just reach out to folks and see how they're doing, and see if you can help support them in any way rather than just ask them for things. Maybe you can offer something to the individual as well.
I'm going to add one last one, and I know it's at 1 o'clock, but one thing that I advise a lot of students who are interested in the planning profession is I tell them to get active, to participate, to seek opportunities, working within the community, attending city council meetings as often onerous as they are, boring sometimes. But what they really need to do is develop a civic sense of community, of service, and from there, that's going to help them build on what they envision for their future. So,
And thank you all for those closing remarks. And I do want to just spend a minute and formally close this out. And I just want to thank you all as panelists for sharing your experiences, your insights today, and to really thank all of those who joined us today. Conversations like this one are an important reminder that leadership in transportation benefits from diverse perspectives, mentorship, and community. We appreciate AALM and all of today's speakers for helping to move this industry forward. On your screen, two key QR codes. One takes you to the California Transit Association to learn more about our organization and how to become a member. The second does the same for AALM. We hope you found value in today's webinar. We look forward to having you for the next one. And I'll just plant a flag. We are working to bring to our association membership a webinar for Pride Month to recognize the contributions of the LGBTQIA community to our industry. And then we will be having our fall conference in late October, where we feature as a standing track community benefits and community impact track, really looking to uplift conversations like these. So, with that, thank you all for joining. Have a great afternoon. And again, to our partners at AALM, appreciate this work together. Thank you.